Here is my first project called Gem Detector, and what it does is it takes a link to a GitHub project that has a gem file in it. It parses out all the names of the gems, does an API call to rubygems.org, gets the information back, and then displays it on this next page. Now at the top we've got all the gems being used, and at the bottom all the commented gems. So what we can see is the name, we can see the summary. So this is a quick way to get a look at a new Ruby project and Sinatra, Rails, whatever. That way you can just kind of get going, like what are the different gems in this gem file, which is one of the things I read is a good thing to start with when you're starting with a new code base or an existing code base. And I had that problem when I started my first job. I had a bunch of Rails projects that I had to get familiar with, and I was looking up all the gems. I was a new developer, still am, and I was trying to figure out what are all these gems. I'd never heard of most of them. So I created this project as a way to kind of make that a simpler process for myself and for other people who may need this in the future. We can also take a gem file that is on our local machine that doesn't have to be on GitHub, and we can take that and we can put it, and it'll do the same thing. It'll parse out all the gems. Here we go. So now let's go back and look at the code base. So here's our app.rb, which for Sinatra holds all our routes. And what we have is our module up here that contains all our classes. And if we go back up here, we can see gem file. Okay, here's our module, here's our classes within the module, and the methods. So we've got our index, our root page right here. This is where we hit. It has our form, which we saw, and then when the form is submitted, it gets sends a post request to gemfile, and what that does is hits this route, and we go right into our GitHub checker. So this first line takes the gem file or whatever's inside that form. It could be a link, it could be the gem file, and that's what this is supposed to figure out. So we go on here and we see, is the text, does it contain GitHub, and is it the size of 1? Because what we're doing is we're checking to see if this is a link or if this is an actual gem file. So this looks like it's a link, so now what we do is we pull out all the information. So what's good about this is that it allows us anywhere in that project, it doesn't have to be the root page of the project, anywhere it'll grab out this information, and then it can grab this raw file and read it in and then return that. So now what we're returning is either the gem file that was parsed out from the GitHub project or just an original gem file, whatever was passed in. So in the case that it's not a GitHub link, then it was a gem file, and that's what we return. So either way, we go back to app.rb, what we're getting back is a gem file. So now what we need to do is get all the gems out of the gem file. So that's this next one, parse.run. So we have our parse, we have this result which holds this, so this takes the gem file right here, the raw one. This takes creates an array that we're going to hold all the active gems that are being used. Here's the commented gems, and so now we have this file, but what we want to do is we want to parse it out into, or we want to split it up into an array, and that allows us to iterate through that, so each line is an element in the array. So we replace the return character with an empty string, and then we split it by a new line character, which would then give us that array that we can work with. We iterate through each one of those. Each line we're going to take and we're going to strip off any leading white space and drop all the to downcase. If the line starts with gem, then we're assuming that it's a gem that we need to get the gem name of. So we have this method down here that'll do that. So we pass in that line. We get the gem inversion by getting line starting at the fourth space on the line. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3 is the word gem, and correction, 0, 1, 2 is the word gem, 3 is the white space, 4 is where we start. That's the name of the gem. So what we want to do is get the gem in the version. In future versions of this, I'm going to use that version to figure out all the dependencies for the current one that you're using, when they were last updated. So if something broke, you can see, oh, this was updated. So I've got future plans for that. That's why I do that. But for right now, I have gem name that's returned with this little bit right here. So up here, we get the gem name back, and then we push that into our results, which is going to be the main container for all our gem names, except for the commented ones, unless the gem name is nil or empty. And so next we have this line, which, so if the gem is its own, if the comment is its own line, or if it follows the gem, either way we're going to get it with this. And so what we do here is we get the line and we strip off the hash, and we strip off any white space between that and the gem, and then we run the same method down here to get back the gem name. Here we push it into the array, and then when we're done, if for whatever reason that these arrays are empty, that means there were no gems, which occasionally there aren't any in a gem file. And we have these two success hashes, return hashes that we send back. So here we've got the gem list, and we have the commented gems, which are two arrays that we get passed back with this. So when we go back to our app.rb, we're going to get that. And now what we need to do is, ideally what we should do here is we should check if it was success or failure. That's something I need to add later. Right now, that's not wired in, so we're just going to take that and we're going to get all the gem information for the non-commented ones and then for the commented ones. So here's our API return. We're going to do this rubygems.call run, and we're going to do the same thing on the commented ones down here. So first we're going to go up to look up gems. So we have our API result that holds the result of a bunch of hashes that contain all the information about each gem. Thread list is where we're going to store all our threads, because we're going to spawn a bunch and then join them. And then info 429 is the error code that was returned when rubygems.org doesn't like how many API calls we're doing and it's too fast, so it sends back that. And so what we're going to do is put that into a loop so that we can continue to loop till we're successful. Next, we have this gem info parse that's going to hold some more information about the gem. We have gemlist.each. So now we're going to go through each one of those gem names. We're going to spawn a thread. We're going to loop through this, and we have 429 that starts off with that. So we are the value. We're going to go ahead and call this down here. So we call this. If for some reason we hit an error, then it's going to return the error. If it's 429, it's going to try it again until it's successful, in which case it gets back a JSON file or a JSON element, and it's passed into here, and then that goes back up into where we called it. So now we have that JSON element. We check to see if it's a string, because it could be a different error code. It could be a number or an integer. So if it's a string, then it's that raw JSON. Now we need to turn it into something that we can work with, which is a hash. So that's why we parse it into a hash, and then we push the result into that API result. Otherwise, we'd say that the gem wasn't found. So if there was an error code, or if we call that, and that gem doesn't exist, RubyGems isn't going to give us any information about it. So now we're going to say gem wasn't found. We have that, and that will be displayed if for some reason it wasn't. Down here, we rejoin the threads, and then we sort the API list, which is that array, by the name, and then we pull out any multiple, if there's duplicates for whatever reason. This is probably unnecessary, but maybe, I don't remember why I put this line in, so maybe at one point there were duplicates. Now, after that, then we iterate through and we get the downloads. We convert the number of downloads so that it's an easy to read number, and then we return the success hash. And again, this should be parsed out back in app.rb, but right now we're just taking it back. We're just assuming that it's a success. We're not handling the failure yet. So now what we do, same thing for commented API return, and then we display this result ERB, which is going to be on this path. So we did the post, now we're going to be rerouted to get gemfile with this, and we pass in these local variables that we're going to iterate through. So here is result, and what we have is a bunch of, we assign the type of information. If it's the class, we just assign the class. So we have gem name. If it's not found at rubygems.org, then we know that we're going to set it to not found, which is that dashed line around the gem, separating it so that you can see that clearly. Otherwise, we assume that it's just it's a gem, that it was found. Here we assign the class name to this div, because what we're doing is we're iterating through each gem up here with this ERB, and then we give the name, all this information, summary, and then we have those local variables that we're accessing that were passed on in the app.rb. Down here, if there's any commented gems, we do the same thing down here. And now we're going to go back to app.rb, and let's see what else. So now we've got, let's take a look at our CSS file. Where is it? Boom. So some new different ones that were created for this. We have gem info, we have not found, so you can see the border is a little bit thicker, it's dashed, so there's some differences here. So we have these custom classes that we were going to assign that we saw. And that's it. So that was my first project. And now on to the next one.